Well, welcome back, guys, and thanks for being with us again. We're going to get into part two very shortly with John Kenel and hear about where we're heading and some ideas for the future. Just a reminder that, High Performer has a really great showroom talking about a whole lot of innovation and ways of building differently and ensuring high quality homes in New Zealand. If you haven't been, or perhaps you haven't been for quite a while, there is ongoing updates to the showroom and there's always something new going on here. So we do recommend coming and seeing us, pop your head in, come have a coffee, jump on the website and book a tour or email one of the team. So yeah, let's go ahead and kick off with part two of our conversation with John Kenel. What part can you see innovation taking place? And there's innovation in construction, which is obviously a big place where High Performer plays, but we're now starting to talk as well into some of those services areas in terms of wastewater and things like that, and how do we actually unlock land and overcome things like that. I was talking to someone earlier and they were saying that Christchurch as a residential market is still going pretty strong compared to everywhere else in the country. And if I look at Christchurch, had a massive infrastructure boost post-earthquake. So they're probably not dealing with the aging infrastructure all the other towns are doing. But also I know of multiple developments down there who have allowed, um, pressure sewer and timed waste management, like you were talking about, being able to pump it out at a certain time and that sort of thing. So clearly and I don't think it's citywide, but I think there's areas that are allowing that sort of stuff and areas that aren't. And it's clearly unlocking land and overcoming some of these issues. So there's two things there. There's innovation, and then there's the attitude of adapting innovation. And that might be at the developer or the builder or the architect's level, but also in terms of civils, it's probably at the council's level. Are they actually prepared to adopt innovation and go, yes, our wastewater can't take this, but this person's proposed an innovative solution that will demonstrate it's not going to add any load, and therefore let's adopt it and approve it. And do they have a mechanism to do that,
I think there's a couple of things there.
Yeah.
One is innovation. Innovation is a luxury that functioning systems with funding can enjoy. We're a long way from that. Number two, around the systems, yes, there are definitely systems that can be installed to like the storage and pump type systems off peak that can help. But I think it's going to take a lot more. I think the government has to get involved and set up some kind of a funding structure and a governance model for three waters in New Zealand. What they're talking about at the moment with Waikato District and Hamilton City, they want to get together and set up a CCO, a council-controlled organisation. Okay. Right. Currently, my understanding is that Watercare is actually managing Waikato District's three waters or heavily involved in it. Why is Watercare a model that we would want to replicate? I don't think I've ever heard anyone say anything good about Watercare. And these council-controlled organisations, the first thing they do is hire a board. Everyone's going to get paid, and the CEO is going to earn 600 grand, and then the rest of the C-suite is going to be on between 400 and 500, and then there's going to be all the management and the marketing and the billing and is that really the way we want to go? Set up another structure that's as inefficient as the council is. I don't know. I think we really need to actually work it out, because there are a lot of different things that could be done. I mean, why does everything need to run to one massive wastewater treatment plant? Couldn't there be more modular, smaller plants set up around the place? Maybe each subdivision or a group of subdivisions has something where they actually do the processing there. There are vacuum-based type sewer systems, which are they're not gravity fed, so they've got more there's more opportunities where you can put them, and
Yeah.
they can be a lot faster and cheaper. Like I'm not the expert, but it seems to me that the infrastructure we have in place was built for another time, another era, and it
Yeah.
was built at a time when New Zealand had a lot more money, and we could afford for things to to just put this stuff in and let it go. But if you think about it, when we built a lot of the housing, it was we were just coming in, putting in new streets and putting all these little boxes in and hooking them up, and that was it. There was no thought about the future, or how's the demand going to grow, and I don't think there's been any real innovation at any point. It's just constantly fix a little bit of this and add on there, and I just don't think this piecemeal kind of budget solution is really going to carry us through.
No, and it sounds like the bureaucracy and the centralization it's really not working. And your story earlier around, the involvement of all the consultants and the kind of the disagreement with each other. And where that's sitting, the fact that council is running that, you're paying for it, but they're running that whole process. Surely when you were talking about that, I'm going, surely can't the council say to you, you know, so decentralize, put this back into the very localized area. Here's John trying to build some houses. Great, John, you can have this much capacity, you know. Oh, okay, but I want to build this many. Yep, well, you get this much capacity. You figure out how you're going to deal with that, you know. And at that point, you can actually hire consultants to provide a solution that will demonstrate you're going to do something within that capacity. And it could have been like, you go, okay, I need a bit more than info rather than just this many liters a day. What about at this time of day or that time of day? Can I get, oh, okay, we could probably give you a different number at these hours. And then you go and design your own system and you solve it locally,
Yep.
And
Yep, that's an option. Yeah, because you can do monitoring, right? You can do smart monitoring, and you can actually see what your usage is. So you could model it up front and then basically buy access to that. But why would that have to be through council? Why couldn't it be that the subdivision puts that in, and then if you want to build a block of couple of blocks of townhouses, then what your sewer and water rate is, what you have to pay the subdivision, for example, or there got to be different ways we can do this.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that scares council, I was looking at a project down in Christchurch area where they'd done pressure sewer systems, and each house had its own tank and a pump, and it was all timed, and it was very clever. But the interesting part was, once that's in, who owns that bit of infrastructure? Because normally wastewater at the boundary line, now that becomes the council's problem, but this is a critical part, how's the homeowner supposed to take care of that? And the council in that case had actually taken responsibility. So the homeowner had a duty to maintain it, which was overall, it was like something once every 10 years or something. And basically, hey, if an alarm goes off or you see a problem, you notify council. And that was all. But so the council was still prepared to take some responsibility for the functioning of that system, which is pretty interesting because it does create a weird boundary around whose piece of asset is this. But you kind of also go, you hear all these costs and these things, and you go, man, rurally you deal with things yourself. There's got to be ways that you know what, we're going to deal with a certain percentage of this on site somehow,
Yep.
And I know I heard of a case the other day down the line, where was it? Where they were talking about pumping treated effluent back into the river. And of course, everybody's upset about that. But the reality was that the water they were pumping back into the river was cleaner than the river water itself. If you go to England, they have systems where wastewater is treated and put back into the fresh water. like they're drinking the stuff. And here
Right.
we are up in arms about trying to put it into the river.
Yeah. Another case of rules, rules, and more rules, right? Why shouldn't you be
Yeah,
able
but
to
I
put it
think
back
it's
into the
weird,
river?
for innovation, and I disagree with you slightly around innovation being a luxury. I think some innovation, yes, but there's also innovation that can solve some of these problems. But we've got to have the right kind of structure for these things to work, and that probably comes down to where risk lies and who's taking risk, in order for the person that's actually carrying risk to invest in innovation.
Well, that risk is actually that's a really good point. Like risk is currently the risk sits with the ratepayer for a lot of
Mm.
things,
Yeah,
right? So if Waikato and Hamilton decide to set up the CCO, then it will have the ability to borrow billions and billions of dollars, and the risk, I assume, sits with the council as a council controlled organization. I don't know, or is
yeah,
it separate? I don't know. But so if we tie this back to the self certification of builders, right? This is something that's just come out.
yep,
That the government are talking about allowing builders and some other tradespeople to sign off their own work,
yeah,
as electricians currently do in New Zealand.
yep,
And it's something that, like Australia, has a lot less inspections
yeah,
throughout construction of a home than we do because there's a lot more self-certification.
yep,
So the risk, and I posted on this recently, and a lot of the feedback comes up, and people go, "Oh, this is another leaky homes. This will be terrible." Well, first off, leaky homes were inspected by council building inspectors,
yes,
and they're still leaky homes. No offense to council building inspectors, but that system's not foolproof, right?
no,
Um, it's all about risk, because I think what they're trying to do is put the risk for bad buildings where it should sit,
yeah,
which is with the people that made the buildings,
yeah,
not with our granny who's paying rent on her granny flat, and because the council gets sued for leaky homes, she has to pay higher rates.
yeah,
Sorry, not rent rates. Her rates
yeah,
go up. Why?
yeah,
That doesn't make any sense. Why is the risk for leaky homes sitting with everybody who owns a house?
yeah,
It should be sitting with the people who built the house and their insurance company.
yep,
That's the way
yep,
I see it. And
yeah,
and who's better at assessing risk than an insurance company?
yeah,
They hire people called actuaries whose whole job it is to be super conehead maths people who just work out risk all the
yeah,
time, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was talking to one the other day, and he was saying, in the States, I think, so the builder, and I think builders here struggle to get cover. So you can get cover for kind of knock-on effects of a mistake, but you can't get cover for poor workmanship. And if you just do a bad job, that's on you. And I don't know how we fix that, but of it,
Well, that's one of the questions that popped up in my mind was, has the government spoken to the insurance industry?
mm,
Because I can't see how we can go ahead with this with tradespeople being able to sign off the work if they don't have insurance.
no.
Um,
Yeah. So he's saying in the States, so the builder has a craftsmanship cover, and his premiums are going to be affected by the quality of his work and how much experience he has and all of these things that go into assessing risk by the actuator. But also the homeowner has to take a cover for the building for 10 years. That's just standard. And I kind of like that there is shared risk. It's assessed based on that building and that place rather than, like you say, a council trying to assess all risk on all buildings and running from every piece of risk they can. And so you've got those two pieces kind of coming together and you've got some stability. I think the biggest struggle we have at the moment is the joint and several clause, where council gets caught regardless of the cover. And once the cover's expired, who's left holding the baby? And I think that's where everyone comes back to with this leaky building thing. would the government have let, or the council would have let that fall? You know, let's say the council could have wiped its hands of leaky building and said, well, it had nothing to do with us. The risk sat with the homeowner and the builder, and it's between them. It would have been interesting to see how that plays out. But the fact that the councils ended up picking a big chunk of the bill has triggered so much of the risk averse nature that we now have.
Well, I don't think councils should be responsible for the consenting either. I think they should set the direction for the council and the district plan, decide what houses they want, where, what the growth projections are for the city, and then you have private organisations compete for the consenting work.
Yep, I agree with that. But it's still the process. You still have to get the process tidier, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is what they're trying to do. And I agree with you around the council, but in terms of there's too many steps, there's too many inspections, and there's too much liability sitting essentially with the ratepayer, you know. And like you say, it shouldn't be the ratepayer's problem. This should be between you and the person owning the house. And there needs to be some kind of policy that sticks around through the transactions if it's built to sell and been sold multiple times within that 10-year period, you know. Yeah,
I think it's responsibility, right? It's about personal responsibility. It's something we're moving further and further away from as a country, and we need to start clawing back.
yeah.
Is that people become responsible for their actions?
Mm,
Why shouldn't a builder be responsible for his work?
yeah.
And he should take pride in his work. And a builder who's good at what he does, his insurance premiums will go down because he has less claims. And then the guys who are not good at, well, their premiums will go up and they may not get insurance at all.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you leave something to the free market and you let the market decide. I think
Yeah.
you'd get a lot better, a better outcome for the homeowner than this ridiculous box ticking, and more consultants reports. I mean, someone replied to one of my comments about this. Oh, yep, the builders should be able to sign off, but then we should have a thorough auditing process, and the auditors should go on site and check the builders' work. And I was like,
It's even worse.
you're
But
just replacing building inspectors with other inspectors. They just can't seem to get past this. How could someone possibly do a good job without having someone watching them?
yeah.
I mean, well, no one watches me. I'm not regulated.
Yeah.
I build houses and I stand behind each of them. I have my stainless steel assured property sign fixed to every building that I do, right?
Yeah.
No one's inspecting me as a developer. Oh, I shouldn't have said that because now they'll start a new organization, right? There'll be
Yeah.
and then I'll have to jump through hoops and go to courses and listen for hours to people talking who've got a fraction of my experience. And I'm just saying this from feedback from builders, the LBP stuff that they need to do. And they've got to do so many hours a year of going to courses and listening to programs. And they do all of this. So they jump through all these hoops to become a licensed building practitioner. They jump through more hoops to retain their licensed building practitioner status. Guess what? They can't sign off anything.
No.
So
No.
what's the point?
And that's the thing, you're talking before about, someone suggesting an auditor, but is that auditor now taking the risk? And
Yeah.
then if he is that the right place for the risk to sit?
Exactly.
Man,
Exactly.
yeah,
I don't know. We got to simplify things, but I don't know what the answer is with councils. I mean, I've thought about different things. One of them is, there's actually only a core piece of work that councils need to do, right? They need to bring in fresh water. They need to take away wastewater. They pick up rubbish, licensed dogs, so on. Could they outsource everything else? You just have maybe 30% of the council staff now, and their job is core infrastructure and managing the outsourced contracts. And you have people competing for the work that council does now, private companies who could do the work for cents on a dollar. They use AI, they be more efficient, and councils just become a management structure, and they're closely audited. Or is there another way? And the other one is this infrastructure. We need the infrastructure now, and councils haven't got the money. So government has to do something, I think.
yeah. I wonder if there is. I wonder if there is space for PPPs and an infrastructure in this kind of infrastructure. I mean, it's working in roading, and I know that those kind of PPP investors and those guys in those space are looking to do more and more, be it
Yes,
housing,
they are.
schooling, or
Yep.
what, you know. Wastewater seems like a bit of a sitter because it's causing so much headaches. It's pretty frustrating. I can hear your frustration, and yet you haven't thrown in the towel.
No,
Do you still have hope? And what's that hope based on?
a good question. As I said, I lived overseas for quite a long time. I'm actually just about to go to Europe for 6 weeks as well. Haven't been for a few years thanks to COVID. New Zealand's still a fantastic country,
Hmm.
right? You can travel far and wide, and there are some beautiful countries around the world, but New Zealand's still, we're still right up there in terms of our natural assets. Just our forests and oceans, and
Hmm.
and generally nice people too. Kiwis are good, down to earth people when they're not holding a clipboard. Immigration's going to continue. We're still going to need more housing, right? And even without it, just drive around most streets in the country, and I cringe at some of the houses,
Hmm.
right? There are so many houses that are well past their use by date, right? They
Yeah.
should just be bowled over. People should not be living in them.
Yeah.
And healthy homes helped a little bit, but there are also a lot of empty homes now because of healthy homes, because
Hmm.
people can't afford to bring them up to scratch and use them as rentals. It's once again the unintended consequences of regulation. But I think I like doing what I do. I like building new housing. I'm proud of what I've done. It's something permanent, that we're creating in this ever more virtual kind of a world that we're living in. You're creating real things, with
Yeah.
steel and concrete and
Yeah.
iron, and they're structures that are going to last, and they're places that people live.
Yeah.
Like families and kids and people grow up there, and you're developing something real, and I really enjoy the ecosystem. The
Yeah.
people that I work with, from starting out with the planners and surveyors and engineers to the builders and electricians and landscapers and
Yeah.
excavators, and the building inspectors and the companies, the electrical companies and the fiber companies, and then the people supplying the carpets and the wholesalers supplying the carpet to the retailer and the real estate agents. And there's this massive ecosystem around housing. It's
Yeah.
it's huge, and I think it's one of the reasons we're in a slump today, right? Because all of those people are waiting.
Yes.
They're waiting for some leadership. They're waiting to be told, now you can go, now you can take a risk, because most of those people are self-employed.
Yeah.
Right? They are, so many people that we deal with. There's, it's mum and dad and two staff,
Mm.
right? And it's exactly those people who employ most people in this country.
Yeah.
And I would wager that they pay most of the tax as well.
Mm.
So I think it's a really good industry to be a part of, and it's something I encourage wherever I can young people to look at trades. University's good, but it's not for everyone. If you're becoming a doctor or an engineer or something, sure, but if you don't need years and years and years and years of specific skilled training, get into a trade, become a roofer, a builder, a plumber, a sparky, a drain layer. You can travel anywhere in the world, and you know what? You go and say, oh, I'm a Kiwi and I'm a drain layer. You've got jobs, well-paying jobs, immediately. It's a really good skill and a good industry, and that's it. Yeah, I'm still positive.
Does the business model still work, but it's painful and slow and less profitable, or is it at risk of breaking?
Property development can still be lucrative, right? It's still a very good business. It's one of the reasons I put together the Property Development Club course, right? The mastery course. I've got a course that's 17 steps, 42 videos, and it runs you through the whole property development process. Yep. And it's tricky today, right? So you need to do things in the right order. And all I'm teaching is what I've learned. I'm not teaching you out of a book or off YouTube. It's just, this is what I did and this worked. And I think it will continue to work, but you've got to do it right. And you've got to keep an eye on timing, right? You don't want to go and try sell townhouses off the plans, probably anywhere in New Zealand today, right? No. At the moment, it's the wrong time. So do the right things at the right time. It is harder though. It's
Yeah.
definitely harder. It's the upside can be really good too.
Well, you've got both happening at the moment, right? Where demand is lower and the ability to supply is a hell of a lot harder. So, do you think if, everything we've just talked about for the last whatever it is was fixed and streamlined, would we still have a compressed demand? And what impact would that have?
Do you want the official answer or
Yeah,
what I actually think?
the real answer.
What I think is politics and councils, because they're both just politicians,
Yeah,
right? And you pay income tax to central government and you pay rates. It's just council tax to local government, right?
yeah,
Politicians do what politicians do. It just goes round and round and nothing ever changes. Just like the economy goes round and round, right? It goes up and it goes down and it goes up and it goes down. So I think all of this is just noise. Okay. Everything that's going on right now is noise. And we are building up for our next housing shortage and our next housing price boom at some point because the reasons change, right? This time, I think it's going to be infrastructure, right? The lack of infrastructure is going to be the big issue that holds back housing supply, which causes demand, which causes prices to escalate.
Yeah.
Last time around, heading up to 2008, what was it? Probably cheap money, a lot of immigration. But there's always a different reason, but it's the same outcome. So we will have another, crazy time where people are at auction rooms fighting over each other and, paying huge money for housing. It's just, it's bound to happen. And yes, it's hard to imagine now when we've got something like 30,000 listings on the market. How many of those are, because people left, people with houses left the country, went to Australia, went to the UK. People coming in, a lot of them are lower skilled. They haven't got the money to buy. They're not even allowed to buy immediately, right? I think you have to be a New Zealand resident. And I don't know if you get that straight away. I certainly know that you used to have to wait a couple of years.
Yeah.
So there is more stock available. Houses aren't selling, so people are becoming accidental landlords. They're just renting their house out, waiting for a better time.
Yeah.
So there's like all the negatives at the moment, right? Just stack them all up.
Yeah.
Trump and war in Ukraine, and you can paint a super negative picture. But this too shall pass, right? It's a stage in the cycle. And we're still going to need building and housing. We've got to replace our old stock. We've got to build new stock. And then the big thing is, right, through all of this noise, nobody's talking about what kind of housing we actually want or need.
Yeah.
Like we're still building these 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, double garage houses on big sections in the subdivisions for these families that actually don't exist anymore. I mean, yes, there are mum and dad and 3-kid families, but there are all kinds of families now, right? And there are singles, there are couples, there are people without kids. There's a lot more older people. Boy, our population is aging fast. Where are all the small single level dwellings, the 2 bedrooms, single levels? Why are we not building little communities of 10 or 15 single level 2-beddy single garage compact, like 90 square meter units, and you have a shared couple of raised veggie boxes and plant a few fruit trees and have maybe a communal lounge kitchen that you can go to if you're wanting for company, and you go back to your own flat, or even smaller, maybe you have 1-beddies. But where's the 50-year plan? Where's the feedback from the community? Where's our planning for what we actually want? All we ever talk about is more units. So then Auckland builds 1 million 2-bedroom units, and now they've got too many.
Yes.
Right? Where's the discussion about what we actually want and what we actually need? I think that's something we're missing. And I think it's part of the problems we're having is how can you reach a goal that if you don't know where it is? I think I heard a quote, and it was, if you jump in your car and drive, you'll always get to your destination. You just don't know which one it is.
It's pretty fascinating because in a lot of ways, what you're talking about is coming back to leadership. Where is the leadership? And these are the cold, hard realities we are now facing of probably a decade or more of popularity politics, where leadership was not a skill set required to win an election.
Well, no, leadership. Yeah, if you could, standing up on a podium and speaking, if that's leadership, then we've had people who are great at it.
Yeah. And it really kind of comes back at that level, and you just kind of go, gosh, you can just see it all flowing down to all of the things that we've talked about today.
I agree completely.
And I feel like that's a really good sum up in terms of leadership, vision. Where is the big picture? What are we buying into? The negative narrative getting all of the airtime, as opposed to who's coming up with some solutions and ideas, and why aren't we stopping and listening to them and getting behind,
Yeah. Yeah. I think people need to speak up though, Like people need to speak up. People need to go along to council meetings, understand what's actually going on, and have your say. Speak up online, speak up with your friends, like talk about the issues. I think, no one votes at council, and then you wonder why they do whatever they want. If you went along and they said, hey, we could keep your rates where they are, or we could put in cycleways and speed bumps and bus stops in the middle of the road and all these other things, and we'll double your rates, who would have voted for it? Right? Probably no one.
Yeah.
But we've only got ourselves to blame because we didn't vote, right? We weren't there. We didn't have our say. And we're a really, really small country. It makes a difference. Every person in this country makes a difference.
Yep.
And if we speak up and we have our say and we say what we want, maybe we can turn this around. And I think that's, what you've been saying about what's been happening the last few years. It's this popularity politics. It's, landlords are bad, let's attack them. And, well, I don't know, let's blame immigrants, or let's blame the LGBTQ, or, it's always somebody else's fault,
Yeah.
but what do we actually want? What is our plan? What are we trying to achieve other than just division?
Yeah. Well, mate, I really appreciate your time and all of your thoughts and your passion, and appreciate that you've had the courage to buck the norm. And but New Zealanders can be apathetic, and there's leadership, but like you say, there's a responsibility on the people.
Yes.
And that's really good to talk about in theory, but ultimately, you have to look in the mirror. Every individual has to look in the mirror and go, what am I doing? I have to do it myself, definitely struggle with speaking up. Would much rather be a bit more passive and let everyone else battle it. But, it has to actually happen at an individual level. And so I want to thank you as an individual in your position, in your space, for having the courage to engage in the conversation and jump in the ring and take some.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I'm in a position where I can now as well, right? I can afford to take a hit and have more difficulties. So I kind of feel a bit like I should.
Yeah.
It's like we're such a small country that everyone makes a difference. So if you can, you should. It's kind of why I'm doing the development in Cambridge at the moment, as I don't really want to be developing right now, but I've got so many people I work with, and it makes a difference if we're doing a development or not, because it has a big knock-on effect. So I can do it, so I should do it. And it's sort of, just to finish off, sorry, but on that responsibility piece, like I often talk about freedom and small government and less rules. Just get out of the way. Let me do my thing. I don't need your help, right? Just let me get on with it. And there are a lot of people who think like that, but what comes with that is responsibility. Because if you say, I don't want the government to do it, I don't want the council to do it, I don't want the rules, then you need to actually create your own community. You need to take the responsibility yourself, because you're not always going to be healthy and have, wealthy and be fit. You're going to be reliant on people sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. And becoming unwell is an example of that. And I guess what I'm getting to is, if we want less government and we want less rules, then we also need to stand up and add value, and like each person, so that I can go to you and go, hey Tim, I'm really struggling with this thing. Can you help me with it? Or I can approach someone who's a health specialist, or someone who can help me with finance, or just someone who I know is good to talk to,
Yeah.
and will listen if I'm struggling. So you want freedom, but it comes with a responsibility.
Yeah.
As it is,
Yeah.
I've been enjoying the conversation. So thank you
Yeah.
very much for having me on. I've really enjoyed it. And look, and I appreciate what you guys do too, because you are all about innovation, and I know how difficult it is to bring new products into the market, even if they're better,
Yep.
because people do what they've always done.
Yep.
Right. And I use Jibboard. So if you've got something else, I'm not really interested. So
Lucky for you, there is nothing else. Yeah.
But there are some. I'm sure there's so many more products, and like we said around water and waste, there must be lots and lots of different solutions around the world that we could be doing things better.
And also, like you're saying, market forces will come into play. The pain will hit a point where something has to happen, and what was too hard before now starts looking like, okay, actually maybe that's a better idea. Well, thanks for hanging in there, guys. I think this conversation was a worthwhile conversation. I suspect, as we have more conversations with other developers, which we're planning on doing, a lot of these thoughts will be reflected industry-wide. You may have some of your own thoughts, and we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to reach out with your feedback. But I think this is a great place to start, and we're going to continue doing whatever we can to encourage a conversation around innovation, but also really getting clear on what is the problem and what are the challenges facing the industry. Interestingly, some of the things that we now have in the showroom that we might not have had 6 months ago, I believe are potential solutions for some of the challenges that we've talked about with John. And so what we might do is start doing a podcast or two on some of those solutions that can help unlock land and speed up consenting and development processes. So stay tuned for that. We're also planning on engaging with government ministers and getting them on the show to talk about what they're trying to do and if it is making enough difference, and whether we all just need to be a bit more patient, or whether they've kind of half cooked things here. So stay tuned. Thanks for being part of the conversation, and we'll look forward to catching up with you on the next one.